The war between Russia and its neighbor Ukraine, which used to be part of Russia, has been going on for 2 months now. Establishment Western media tells us that the bad guys are Russia and that the good guys are Ukraine. But thanks in part to our media's impressively long record of lies, propaganda, and outright ineptness, it makes sense why many would believe the opposite. Because whatever the activists at CNN and the New York Times say, you can begin by eliminating that as the truth. We also know that there is a significant deep state influence on the most powerful Western governments, which makes their actions automatically suspect. So oddly, there is now a portion of the American population who supports Vladimir Putin, a certified communist who is leading a government that arrests people just for disagreeing with its actions. So is it possible that what's happening here is a battle between two villains? I'm Paul Dragoo, and in this Freedom is the Cure episode, we're taking a nuanced, non-binary look at this war, and we'll try to wade through a marshy information fog in order to establish a position that benefits everyone who values liberty. Joining me today is one of America's top investigative journalists. For nearly 4 decades, William Bill Jaspar has been covering the most important stories. He served as an accredited correspondent at the United Nations in New York and at UN summits around the world. He has researched and written about the global collectivist threat extensively. He is the author of the United Nations Exposed and Global Tyranny, Step by Step. He is also, is Putin, for instance, is he fighting? Is he a hero now? Is he fighting the New World Order? Is he a great defender of Christianity? You want to start diving into that? Let's talk about our not pro-Putinism.
Yeah. So this is very important because, particularly in the last decade, but especially since the Trump era, with all of the very vicious attacks on not just President Trump, but on his policies and all of his supporters, we have seen how terribly rancid and wretched and what a terrible lie machine our media is, the fake news media. And so people don't trust them at all. And so when the media starts attacking Putin, they think he must be a good guy. And that seems to be borne out by much of the propaganda that's coming from Russia, in which Putin seems to be, to many people, the only major leader in the world who is supporting Christianity. I said seems to be because I've dealt with this. I've spoken at Christian conferences and the pro-family, pro-life conferences where a significant number of people hold that view. Why do they believe that? Well, look around our culture today, and they see the President of the United States, Joe Biden, just last week or the week before, proclaims Transgender Visibility Week, and he's endorsing the transgenders, and he puts transgenders on there. We have the LGBTQ, LMNOP, XYZ lobby very militantly pushing every boundary away here in the United States. They're very radical and militant upfront about that now. We have the abortion lobby here going crazy, and Putin seems to be, because he has declared that the LGBTQ lobby is not welcome there, and he's reduced the abortion rate there, and he's opened the churches, and so that looks very good compared to what we're seeing from Western leaders who are embracing all of the evils that are destroying our Western, what remains of our Christian civilization.
Well said.
We have been very upfront from the very beginning. When all the rest of the media was promoting Putin, most Americans may not remember, but going back even before he was first named prime minister by Boris Yeltsin, clear back in 1999, Putin was welcomed to write a front page op-ed story for the New York Times. And so he was first introduced to the Western world by the New York Times, and he had essay title or op-ed titled "The War We Are In" or something like that. Anyway, I have it in one of my new stories that's coming out. And we wrote about it at the time. He was saying, look, we're just like you. We have a terrorism problem here, and we need to come together, the West and Russia, and fight terrorism together. And the New York Times was all in favor of that. They're saying, yes, Putin seems to be a great guy. And so then after he gets put in as prime minister, they gave a bunch more. And so the rest of our media did too, promoting Putin, saying, oh, he loves jazz. He's a great new potential ally for us. We were saying, no, he's KGB. He's been KGB his whole life. Yes, it's possible. There are Saul Road to Damascus conversions, but we've got to see proof. The rest of the media was all over him. And George Bush, after 9/11 in 2001, after the terrorist attacks, again promoted this idea that we have to join together with Putin as an ally against terrorism. And the media played up that Putin was the first world leader to call President Bush after 9/11. And so this was a wonderful example of what we could expect from Putin. So for the first 10 years of his prime ministership, president, and then prime ministership again, he and Medvedev rotated in and out of office there. We were pretty much alone at the New American, trying to tell people, look, don't believe this. This is a terrible deception. Because we pointed out all of the other things that he was doing, all the journalists he was killing, the dissidents he was killing, the assassin teams that he was sending over to Europe and other places to kill dissidents, the fake war that he launched in Chechnya, based upon his own FSB, KGB blowing up apartment buildings in Moscow and blaming it on the terrorists to justify going to war against the terrorists against the people of Chechnya. So we were exposing him all along. So we are not pro-Putin. We've been consistent for over 22 years, going back to 1999 on him. And of course, before that, to Chernenko and Brezhnev and those who preceded him. So there was a change that took place in 2008 when Putin, Russia, invaded Georgia, not Georgia, United States, but the country of Georgia. And that caused a kerfuffle for a while, and a bunch of the foreign policy establishment, the Bush administration, wants to say, oh, you're a bad guy, Putin. And they kind of wrapped his knuckles, and then they started up with him again. And we had when George Bush was succeeded by Obama, Obama was promoting Putin. So we've had Republicans and Democrats in the White House and in Congress promoting Putin for years. Hillary Clinton has been a big promoter of Putin, and her husband Bill. And in fact, Hillary helped set up the Skolkovo, which is the big Silicon Valley of Russia. President Medvedev, who was Putin's sidekick, came over here to the Silicon Valley in 2008 and met with all the big guys at Cisco Systems and Microsoft, et cetera, and invited them all over to Russia. Hillary Clinton facilitated that. She went over there. Joe Biden went over there. You can see still on the Wayback Machine when Biden was vice president, he went over to Skolkovo. He met there with Putin, with Medvedev, and Skolkovo has been built into this great big tech center in which our top tech companies have been building the technocracy there that is helping Putin carry out his various attacks. we were almost alone in opposing and exposing that. Everybody said, "Oh, this is wonderful," and so you had all the tech titans over there, all the big business, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, all the big bankers and big business people saying this is a wonderful thing, and so it went like that until 2014. And what happened in 2014? Well, that was Putin's first invasion of Ukraine into Crimea. And so then supposedly all the media turned against him, and he is now the villain. They were promoting him all up until that time because he was going to help bring in, they said, and he said, a new world order. He was welcomed at the World Economic Forum even after the invasion in 2014. He and the other oligarchs who work very closely with him were big features at the World Economic Forum, which is the main center for globalist elites bringing forth this great reset for a new world order.
The control center.
Yes. So, Putin has been helping bring along this new world order, this reset of the whole planet for quite some time. And when I was speaking at Christian groups and pro-life groups that were confused about this, and it's easy to see why they are, because you can see propaganda coming from Russia where you have long processions of people praying and singing hymns and carrying icons, and you see President Putin at a baptism where he is a godfather and he's making the sign of the cross, and it looks very good. Then you contrast that with the scenes that look like they're out of the abyss from the gay pride parades, etc. Mm-hmm. And you go, okay, well, this is the sacred, this is the profane. And the important thing to remember here, and I brought it out in this article and previous articles of a special issue that we're putting together right now. It'll be out next week. This is not the first time that the communist leadership in the Kremlin has used religion like this. Back during World War II, when you remember at the beginning of the war, Hitler and Stalin were working together. They were dividing up Europe between them. They were allies. So we had the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the Stalin-Hitler Pact. And then, as always happens in these kinds of criminal enterprises, just as we have in the mafia and the drug cartels and whatnot, the thieves, the murderers have a falling out and they turn on each other. And so when Hitler turned on Stalin, he was getting his tail kicked and he needed help. And so he says, we've got to get the Russian people behind us. So many of the Russians were still opposed to the communist regime. So we have to use nationalism and religion. And so he really appealed to the nationalist patriotism. Look, Mother Russia is being invaded. We must stop the invaders, the barbaric invaders. And we needed the spiritual backing, the moral backing of spiritual authority to do this. So they resurrected the Russian Orthodox Church, and they simply ordained a bunch of communist apparatchiks to be bishops and metropolitans, and they released some who were genuine, who were in prison, and they said, look, come back out. We know the error of our ways. We need religion here. And a lot of them went along with it, and they were able to get the Russian people to come behind them. And that's what they're doing now and have been for the last 20 years. Russia recognizes that, and it's in their own literature, and it's in literature of demographers all over the world, that Russia is facing a very critical time in its demography. They are dying. They have an aging population. They have been the leader of abortion since the communists took over in the Bolshevik Revolution. That's where the big push for abortion came from, going clear back to the early 1920s. And so for several generations of doing this, they now are dying, and they recognize, the Russian Academy of Science says that if they don't reverse this, that by 2050 the United Kingdom will have a higher population than they do. So because they've already destroyed demographically such a large segment of the child producing womanhood, they now are encouraging people to have not just 2 children, but 3, 4, 5, 6 children. And they say that might not even be enough. So we're going to have to import from Dagestan, Tajikistan, the Stan sisters, etc., more population, younger population. But that would be a little bit problematic because so many of them are Muslim, and that could cause more friction. So what we're seeing now in the suppression of abortion and of the LGBTQ, because they recognize that if you have a bunch of lesbians, homosexuals, whatnot, they're not going to naturally have children. They're going to have to. Yeah. So it is, what they are promoting now is the same as when they were fighting Hitler. It's not for a moral purpose, a moral reason. They're doing it for a very practical, pragmatic reason. We need religious fervor and natural families in order to repopulate. So they see humans as rabbits that, now you want them to produce, now you don't want them to. We'll keep them in cages, but we're going to go into
right. What you wrote about that at least one time in 2014. You wrote Putin, Defender of Christian Faith and Morality. I don't know if you remember that article. And you documented, names of communist agents who are, put at the head of the churches and whatnot. And as you said, it's people are looking over here. We're seeing the depravity, the decadence, and obviously there's a lot of. It seems maybe it makes sense. Here you have a leader who's standing up for Christianity and whatnot. Now, I wanted to go back to, you were talking about how he is part of the globalist system, reinforcing, perpetuating this oncoming Great Reset type system. Is it possible, because earlier you also mentioned the break between Hitler and Stalin. Is it possible that in between all the things that he has said to show that he is part of that, he's very well on board with it, that there may have been a break between Putin and the strategists and the planners, the globalists of the Great Reset?
Yeah, so this is one of the speculative areas that I've had this debate with friends of mine who follow this very closely. And so the question is, in any kind of arrangement like this, I mentioned earlier the mafia or the drug cartels. They do from time to time have conferences and get-togethers where they decide, okay, let's work together, let's divide up things, and let's not be fighting amongst each other. And they unify the drug cartels, gangs in various cities, or traditionally we know about the mafia doing this, the various mafia families. And at times, they completely work together, and at various times, they pretend to be fighting amongst each other to play off law enforcement against and government agencies. But many times, they actually do end up fighting amongst themselves. And so when we're looking here at Putin, and not just him, but Ukraine, Belarus, as it's called now, or Tajikistan, or any of the other Stan sisters that are former communist countries that are still run by former communist intel operatives. It's always difficult to know how much of this cooperation they're doing with the West and then the breaks, the rest, how much of it is real and how much of it is staged. We do know this, that as much as the Biden administration and the media, from the start of the war, when they began putting sanctions upon Russia, we were told, "Oh, this is gonna destroy Russia," and the ruble went down overnight by 40%. It has since recovered, and we look at the sanctions that were supposedly going to destroy Putin, and we see that really they didn't do the things that they should have done if they really wanted to punish him. In fact, they drove up the price of oil, and he has benefited from this. Putin has.
And we've been hurt more
That's
by him than they have, haven't they?
sure. And if he really wanted to hurt Putin, if Biden's administration, who's totally World Economic Forum, Council on Foreign Relations, Global New World Order. I mean, his Build Back Better program was taken right from the United Nations and the World Economic Forum.
Verbatim, right?
Verbatim. I mean, he and Boris Johnson and Justin Trudeau and all the rest of these World Economic Forum apparatchiks were all saying the same thing, the exact same words: build back better, build.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all contrived. If Biden truly wanted to hurt Putin, he would have done what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump released our energy industry to go forward and produce our coal, our oil, our natural gas, and not only make America net energy independent, but where we were actually exporting and earning earning money from our energy resources. Biden has made us more dependent upon Russia, not only us, but because of supply and demand, has made many of the other countries of Europe and other countries that are dependent upon imports of energy, made them net exports of financing to Putin. So if he really wanted to hurt Putin, he'd release the Keystone Pipeline. He'd say, drill, baby, drill. We're going to go after all of our different energy sources and use them as we should. But he's not doing that. There's another very important thing showing playing together into the World Economic Forum Great Reset program. One of the central features of the Great Reset, which is the program put forward by the World Economic Forum, by Klaus Schwab and all of his Davos billionaire elites, is the imposition of a cashless society. They've called for central bank digital currency, CBDC. Mm-hmm. And on March 9th of this year, for the first time, the President of the United States issued an executive order to begin putting us into a central bank digital currency. So what does that mean? That means, as the World Economic Forum has explained it, that we will end up with, if they are successful, a social credit system, digitized currency like they have in communist China. How do we know that? Well, Xu Min, who's one of the top economists for China, and who has helped design their digital currency, is one of the big head guys at the World Economic Forum. And when they have, you can go online to the World Economic Forum, look up central bank digital currencies, and you will see Xu Min and other communist Chinese economists right there at the World Economic Forum with all the billionaires of Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Mike Bloomberg. All of those folks, they're in real tight with the communist Chinese, and they think that that's a wonderful system. And so on March 9th, and this is executive order, President Biden said, we're going to start exploring. He wants the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department to start exploring, he said, the central bank digital currency. They're not exploring it. This has already been the Federal Reserve, the Bank for International Settlements, Bank of England, Bank of Canada. All the central bankers have been meeting like they do every year at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming conference. and at the World Economic Forum and at the Group of 30. They've been pushing this for a number of years, and they've been working very closely with the Chinese Communist government. And in China, if you want to see where this would be going, look at what's happening in China. You cannot buy anything there. You cannot go anywhere without a camera being on you. They have hundreds of millions of cameras everywhere. And if you say anything on your social media, or if you do anything that they disapprove of, if you don't clap hard enough when Xi Jinping's speeches are broadcast, that goes as a negative on your social credit system, and you might not be able to buy any food, gas, or anything else. So this is very important. And Putin's invasion of Ukraine is helping us move in that direction. How? It's going to, along with what we've already seen happen in the last two years with COVID and all the massive spending that is now starting to really be seen in the inflation as all of that comes into the system. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is bringing us now to the point with the energy and the inflation to where the US dollar is in a very precarious position. And It's going to, will it push us over the edge into this central bank digital currency? A lot of people think it will. A lot of economists think that that's where we're headed. So there's a lot of factors at play here, which go way beyond what we're seeing in our regular news. Whether it's Fox or CNN or whatnot, they all seem to be promoting this idea that we have to get involved further and further into this war.
Well, Bill, let's finish it up. Let's wrap it up with this, because I think this put a good bow tie on it. There's no real heroes here. We've established that this is dangerous all around. What is a winning position? What is a position that people who love liberty, those of us who value it and want liberty to prevail, should take? How do we look at what's going on in this conflict in the context of liberty prevailing?
Well, that's a tough question, and it's tough to answer, because the globalists who are pushing the current narrative know how powerful it is for good people to see injustice on this kind of a scale, and to see all the tragedy that's happening with the victims, the refugees, the people who are being killed, the devastation that is being caused, and to not respond in a heroic way. We should go in and help. We're being manipulated there. So there is nothing that we can do to actually stop this in terms of going in under NATO or the UN and fighting the Russians on this issue. We don't want it to go into nuclear war. The effort now is to get us to commit more fully in NATO, and this is being used to pull more of the countries of Europe into NATO, to feel that we have to have our membership in here in order to survive against Russia. That is destroying more of the sovereignty of the nation state and pushing people more and more into regional governments, which is what NATO and the EU have become for all of Europe. And it is empowering the United Nations. Right now, the big push is on to use this as an example to empower the International Criminal Court at the United Nations, because we have these atrocities. We have to bring Putin and all these other people to trial. That can be used against us. They want to empower NATO, and I've done other articles on NATO showing all of the ultra communists, including terrorists, former terrorists, that are running various parts of NATO. And so NATO is not a good organization for us to rely on for anything there.
Or to be
So
part of, right?
to be part of. So uh, the answer for Americans is to go back to our Constitution. Our Constitution does not give the federal government authority to go off on all these different things. If they're going to get involved in something, they have to actually declare war. Congress has to declare war. And if Congress declares war, then at least you have a backing of the American people, presumed, for them to do it. If not, they'll be voted out of office. We have seen since World War II, the United States get involved in one conflict after another, never with a declaration of war.
Right.
And that just gives the president then basically unlimited power to conduct warfare all over the world.